It is a privilege and an honor to have front row seats to the extinction of the Fiat system and rolling out this new Kardashev Type 1 technology, a new protocol for the world that is truly transformative. I believe in this project as one of the most important revolutions in human history. It will enhance culture, it will lower time preference, and it will create an abundant future. But while Bitcoin fixes a lot of problems, it won't fix them without some collateral damage.
For sure. You need the black and the white. It can't just be black or white, right? Like the yin and yang revolve around black and white.
There's a yin and yang situation going on with hyper-Bitcoinization, for sure. So Bitcoin is a true revolution. It's a revolution in the true sense of the word. It is a social, psychological, monetary, institutional, societal, civilizational revolution. And revolutions are messy. I think that Bitcoin is the best money the world has ever seen. It is a once in a species, a discovery and invention. And I think it's we have the responsibility now to not mess this up, because we could. And that's why I'm exploring these darker paths in the Bitcoin rabbit hole, just for the love of Bitcoin. Bitcoin could become an Orwellian surveillance system. With the chain analysis and a permanent record of every transaction, it's like Bitcoin is designed to be a dystopian financial surveillance tool. It could become everything it was designed to prevent.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, I would really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button, which is the easiest way you could show your support for the show and help it grow, as well as making sure you don't miss out any of the future episodes. Also, a big shout out to Stampseed for sponsoring the show. Check out stampseed.com for more information. And now let's get the episode underway. Welcome back to Your Bitcoin Story. I'm your host, Gigi, and today I'm excited to have Ioni Appelberg back on the show. Ioni is a general practitioner by day and a cypherpunk by night. And he's a brilliant mind behind one of my all-time favorite Bitcoin books, Abundance Through Scarcity. On top of that, Ioni is also known for his creative, educational Bitcoin animation videos. So make sure to check out his YouTube channel. Always thoughtful, always insightful. Ioni, welcome back to the show.
So much, Gigi. Good to be back. I really enjoyed our last conversation.
Yeah, no, indeed. I was looking forward to having you back on the show because there was a lot of things we didn't get to cover. It was, I believe, like an hour and a half long episode. One of my favorites because we delved into so many different rabbit holes, not just the orange one. So anyone listening to the show, if you haven't listened to Ioni's Bitcoin story in the first episode, then go back to episode 46 and hear how Ioni's journey down the rabbit hole started and all the other things that we discussed. But yeah, I guess it'll be continuation 2.0 with Ioni. So how have you been since we last spoke?
I'm very well. I'm doing very well. I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying the human experience. I'm working on radical self-alignment and just every day getting closer to where I want to be in life.
Amazing. I guess that's kind of what every Bitcoiner strives, right? Like the Bitcoin opens up the possibilities to really running and aiming for the life that you really want to live, kind of slowing down and focusing on things that really matter, myself included. You know, since we last spoke last summer, I was grinding 2 Fiat jobs, 9 to 5, recording these episodes at night, trying to raise 2 young kids, trying to be a husband at the same time, juggling so many things on my plate. And it was just getting so stressful. And at some point, you kind of need to make the decision. Do I stick to that death routine of 9 to 5? Or do I just take the leap of faith and just resign and go full in what I'm passionate about? And that's what I did this year. And here we are in Q2. And I feel like a rock's been taken out of my chest, like off my chest. It's a very zen feeling, but at the same time, you know, there's so many things I want to pursue and I finally have the time to do them. And more importantly, I have the time to focus on raising my kids and, you know, really being that present father and taking time out when I want to. At the time of this recording, I decided to take a 1-month-long vacation to go back home and spend time with family, which is something, thank you, Satoshi, has given us, right? Like you are allowed to really kind of, you know, you master your own time, which I think is something super important that I hope most people listening to this show can do at some point in the future. So I guess on a personal level, take us down kind of, where are you aiming to kind of take your life? Kind of, what's your goal?
The most important thing I have in my life now is my spiritual journey. Being a Bitcoiner, for a lot of people, leads you down a path of some form of awakening. It can be an awakening to the fact that we are imprisoned by the fiat system. It can be an awakening to the fact that we have corrupted money, and money really is mental operating system that affects our time preference and a lot of things, our morals, with spillover effects to our relationships, our architecture, our food. But spiritual awakenings don't come, or rather, when you have one awakening, you tend to have several others. They sort of pile on, but they don't come out automatically. Changes in life are depend on your decisions. You have to do the actual work. It's not enough to hold Bitcoin. It's not enough to take psychedelics to have a spiritual awakening. You have to actually do the work. And quite recently, I did an ayahuasca ceremony, and I was given a few lessons in that ceremony that have further propelled me on this journey towards radical self-alignment and finding meaning and purpose in life at a much deeper level than I had before.
Amazing. I mean, could you share some of those lessons? Like, I would love to, like, at some point in my life, I would love to go through the experience of having the real ayahuasca kind of trip or journey, or however you want to frame it. But I'm always curious. I have some friends that, you know, that have experienced it, but none of them are true kind of down the pathway that we are as Bitcoiners. They kind of all live their own lives, and they all have different experiences. But kind of, what did you take away from your recent ayahuasca ceremony?
Every time I engage with the medicine, I have different lessons. It's like coming back to your spiritual teachers. And these past few times, I have had my butt kicked quite severely. You know, going on a path of radical self-alignment and spiritual awakening is, it's essentially panic attacks and existential crisis, and then everything's just nice and dandy. But you have to go through hellfire. A lot of people have to. I am one of those. For me, the getting to where I want to be is not a it's not a walk in the park. I'm having to do some work to get where I want to be. And some of the lessons I've been told recently has been that don't come back here. Don't rely on the medicine as a crutch before you've actually integrated the lessons that we have given you before. So I have no reasons to take any medicines in the near future before I actually sort out a few things. And what the medicine has been telling me is that I just have a few aspects of my life that I have neglected, like my social life, for example, that has been suffering quite a lot. But in my ayahuasca experience, that session was probably the most beautiful and enlightening experience I have ever had. It's, if I were to judge my human experiences this far in life, I would put that at probably number one. I learned a few things about myself. For example, I learned that I have a body, and that may sound trivial, but I have completely changed my relationship with my body after that experience. And what I mean by that is, like, body is what gives us the human experience. It gives us this opportunity to be on this planet and have this experience. And body speaks the language of emotions, feelings, sensations. And the interface, the linguistic interface between the mind and consciousness and the body's language is it's a language that we have to learn to make the most of this. So when you have when you broaden the spectrum of your emotions in life and learn to love the whole spectrum, and you invite in the emotions as honored guests into your body instead of
repelling everything.
Instead of ignoring them and looking the other way and ignoring your emotions. When you actually treat them as honored guests, you realize that they are bearers of information. And when you broaden the spectrum of emotions that you have in life, the good and the bad, that's when you reach a level of contentment that I've never had before. And also, I've just learned that listen to body. Body often knows best. Body has billions of years of evolution behind it. Life arose on this planet 4.5 billion years ago, and all of that time is in body. So if we look at ourselves not as physical beings, we are pretty small, but as time beings, we are huge. We are gigantic time beings. So we don't see time. We see space as human beings. But if we look at time and see ourselves as time beings, we are massive. There's 4.5 billion years of just biological history in body. So body pretty much knows what it's doing. Listen to it. If it wants ice cream every now and then, have an adult conversation with your body, and you can ask if it's okay to go for a walk before we do ice cream, and instead of punishing body with rigorous training, too little sleep, just listen to body, respect it, and love it for whatever it is. Treat it well. And when you work on the relationship with body, that has helped me a lot to also improve my relationships with other people. So that's one lesson that I got off my ayahuasca session.
It's very interesting how you said kind of the body is this time vehicle that's been running and evolving for like 4.5 billion years. I've never kind of thought of it that way. Kind of, to me, the body was always kind of this vehicle that I experienced this reality through. But, kind of, as you said, the historical significance of it is huge, and most people don't talk about it. And when you were telling me that thing, essentially about that concept of body being a time vehicle, like, I related it to Bitcoin, right, as being this time chain that, kind of, we have this historical records that are unruggable and can be changed. First time in history, like all the history books that we have all been taught ourselves, our parents, our grandparents, were always books that were written by the winners. And in most cases, I truly believe that 90% of the stuff, or maybe even higher, 95 or 98% of the stuff isn't true. It was always kind of fabricated to what the winners of every revolution, war, kind of wanted to dictate for future generations. And now with Bitcoin, we have the first time ever that the winners can't dictate what goes in the history books, but the history gets embedded in this time chain. So it's very interesting, kind of your first lesson with the body being this time vehicle. And another aspect of listening to your body, since I was a kid, to me always the gut feeling was something that I don't know why, but I always went with the gut feeling, even if it seemed like the wrong decision at the time. If the gut's telling me go right, but I really want to go left, and everybody's telling me go left, I'm still going to go right, because I have this deeper feeling inside. And I think it's super important, as you said, to listen to what your body tells you and not object it and not fight it, but kind of flow with the stream, because the body knows best, as you said. So
yeah, gut feeling is, I would say, it's wise to listen to gut feeling. There's wisdom in that, because what is gut feeling? Gut feeling is essentially your subconscious doing calculations that you don't have conscious access to. And the subconscious mind can perform calculations orders of magnitudes more deeper and complex than your conscious mind can. And when it derives an answer for whatever it is you are calculating, whether it is if you should move city, go with a certain partner, or buy a new car, whatever that is, it's gonna it's gonna produce an emotion as a result, because that is how body communicates. So you send a request for an answer to a question. You plant it inside your mind. It reaches the subconscious. Subconscious does incredible calculations and returns an emotion. And that emotion bears the information that you need to make the best possible decision that you can.
In a world where water spills, fires rage, and pets chew everything in sight, only one thing can save your Bitcoin seed phrase: stamp seed. Don't let a coffee accident turn your Bitcoin into Bitcoin gone. With stamp seed, your seed phrase is engraved in metal, safe from elements, toddlers, and your own clumsiness. Use promo code BTCstory at stampseed.com for 15% off, because in the end, metal always wins. And now, let's get back to the episode.
makes sense. Well, I guess the TLDR on that one is trust the gut. Don't think you're going to outsmart your subconscious with your own rational and high time preference decisions and wants and needs.
Yeah. There's wisdom in listening.
For sure. Well, that's why God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? I mean,
yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
You mentioned I thought you mentioned revolutions and history. I thought we could go down that path.
Sure.
I have a few. I've been working on a few ideas that I would like to try out here, premiere them here on your podcast, if that's okay.
Of course, it would be an honor.
Excellent. So I was gonna do a talk either in Prague or Helsinki about this, but I'm changing my topic, so I'm thinking we could talk about it here instead. And we are at a place now with Bitcoin where we are really starting to think about the real effects of hyper-Bitcoinization. We're actually starting to see sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, and we have enough information to actually picture what a Bitcoinized economy could be. And that is amazing. If we go back just a decade, it was really difficult to imagine what a hyper-Bitcoinized economy, a hyper-Bitcoinized world would be.
Yeah.
Some technologies are so powerful that they redefine the world. Fire, the wheel, the plow, the printing press, the steam engine, electricity, the internet. And when we look at these paradigm altering technologies today, we see all of their benefits. But the road to get to where we are today was not an easy one. It was pretty brutal. So there are some things about hyper-Bitcoinization that most people don't talk about. Bitcoin is one of those technologies where the road to hyper-Bitcoinization could be devastating. It's going to be revolutionary, but revolutions are messy. So I think that it's worth to raise the questions on what is this? What is the road to hyper-Bitcoinization actually going to be like? Because I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park.
No.
So I always feel a bit like a party pooper when I talk about this, but it's there are some real concerns that I think that we need to discuss about hyper-Bitcoinization. And just as a disclaimer, I live on a Bitcoin standard. I run a node. I believe in this project as one of the most important revolutions in human history. It will enhance culture, it will lower time preference, and it will create an abundant future. But while Bitcoin fixes a lot of problems, it won't fix them without some collateral damage.
For sure. You need the black and the white. It can't just be black or white, right? Like the yin and yang revolve around
exactly.
black and
There's
white.
a yin and yang situation going on with hyper-Bitcoinization, for sure. And I would say that most Bitcoin rabbit holes that I've been down are awesome. They're amazing. There's love, light, and prosperity in most in most paths down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Some are crazy and some are delusional. Most are just amazing and filled with love and light. But there are dark ones as well. And like I said, when I first started to talk about the trade-offs with hyper-Bitcoinization, I really felt like a party pooper. But as I thought more and went down one of these darker rabbit holes, what I found at the deepest levels was pretty horrifying. So, dear listener, welcome to my trauma dump.
Let's go. We're ready.
Let's go. So Bitcoin is a true revolution. It's a revolution in the true sense of the word. It is a social, psychological, monetary, institutional, societal, civilizational revolution. And revolutions are messy. So just to take a familiar example, the Industrial Revolution. During the Industrial Revolution, the first Industrial Revolution, around 7060 to 1840, around that era, nations that were industrializing, they realized that industrialization is incredibly expensive. It was so expensive, in fact, that the prevailing belief was that you couldn't industrialize using just your own resources. You had to take from others. This fueled the second wave of colonialism, with nations like England, the Netherlands, and Belgium looting the wealth of places like Congo and India to support their industrialization. So, industrializing these nations led to some of the worst slave trades in history. And another early insight by the pioneers of industrialism was that the industrial technology can and will be weaponized. So if one nation uses industrial technologies to build tanks and warships, others had to do so as well. So industrialization became an arms race. And this arms race culminated in World War I and World War II, costing hundreds of millions of lives. So the byproduct of the first industrial revolution was one of the worst slave trades in history and 2 world wars. Now, we survived the industrial revolution barely. You could say we graduated it with a C-. But over time, we learned it took a slave trade, colonialism, 2 world wars, and 200 years of suffering.
Yeah.
But now we're actually pretty good at being industrialized. It's not causing much harm anymore. But getting here was not easy, and there's a lot of recency bias here. And we're forgetting how dire the consequences of the Industrial Revolution really was. And every paradigm altering revolution has these unique trade-offs. It has unique trade-offs. The agricultural revolution was arguably even worse than the Industrial Revolution, but it's so long ago that I find that the Industrial Revolution is a better example. It's more relatable. But we can also look at the third Industrial Revolution, the digitization of the world. That's more recent and very relatable. And just for context, the definition of an Industrial Revolution is the rise of a technology that transforms every industry. So we had the first Industrial Revolution. That's usually what we associate with the Industrial Revolution, and that was between like 1760 to 1840. And this was
like
the
steam engines,
of
right?
society. Exactly, steam engines. This is where what we it was characterized by like the transition from hand production to steam powered mechanical manufacturing. So coal, iron, textiles, railways, and the steam engine. The second Industrial Revolution, do you know what that was?
The electrical one, right?
Yes, exactly. Electrification of society.
My ancestor, thank you, Nikola Tesla, for empowering, lighting up the world.
Yes.
Or as the Western education system, it's Thomas Edison, but to me, it'll always be Nikola Tesla.
Of course, it's Nikola Tesla. So this was late 1800s, early 1900s. Electricity, petroleum, steel, mass production, assembly lines. That was the second Industrial Revolution. And the third Industrial Revolution, do you know what that was?
The internet,
yes,
right?
Yes, the digitization of society. So beginning in the 1960s, and it's still ongoing. And this is fascinating. People think that we are already past the digitization of society. No, we're in the beginning of that. It's gonna be wild. And so this era, the digitization of society, the third Industrial Revolution, is characterized by electronics, computers, telecommunication, automation. And then now there's overlap between most of these. And now we are also in the fourth Industrial Revolution, beginning somewhere in the 2010s. And I don't personally have a good word for this, but I'm thinking about calling it the transcendence of society, this era, this revolution, the fourth Industrial Revolution. And it's characterized by things like artificial intelligence, psychedelics, Bitcoin, fusion power, possibly quantum computing, possibly advanced robotics, biotechnology, longevity medicine, space technology, these kinds of things. So I mentioned the third Industrial Revolution as another example of a revolution that is really messy. So the internet is one of the most expensive megastructures humanity has ever built. Do you know how much the internet cost to build?
No idea.
It cost over $1 trillion, or about half of all existing Bitcoins.
Wow.
It was our first planetary scale technology, and it marked the beginning of our ascent up the Kardashev scale. But for every great advancement, there's a dark side, a yin and yang, and the digitization of the world is no different. So like the first Industrial Revolution, the steam engine and all of that, leading to colonialism, slave trade, and 2 world wars. The dark side of this third Industrial Revolution, the digitization of society, we have the Fiat System. That's a direct product of a byproduct of the third Industrial Revolution. And it is the most insidious plague and debilitating cancer to ever haunt humanity. We have the rise of the surveillance state as a consequence of the third Industrial Revolution. We have grifting. We have things like OnlyFans, porn addiction, sexual predatory behavior. We have social isolation. We have a global mental health crisis primarily affecting Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We have misinformation, disinformation, and a degeneration of trust in our institutions. So the first industrial revolution led to mass death, and the third, digitization, is leading to mass depression, erosion of moral, a weakening of the modern man. And all of these technologies are emerging out of the digitization, and it's breeding a surveillance state, a collapse in trust of institutions. It's leading to erosion of money, erosion of culture, erosion of time preference. And we're already in a pretty severe population collapse. And if Gen Z and Gen Alpha decide not to have children because of economic strain and declining mental health, I mean, what happens next? Yeah, it's over. It's over. That's the end of civilization if we stop having kids. And that leads us to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a true revolution, like the digitization of society and the mechanization of society. It is our second Kardashev Type 1 technology, Internet being the first. A Kardashev Type 1 technology is a planetary technology, and we only have two. We only have the Internet and Bitcoin. The Internet allowed us to transmit information across the planet, and Bitcoin does the same for value. It is our second Kardashev Type 1 technology. And I believe Bitcoin is one of the greatest revolutions in human history, but every revolution has unintended consequences. And I think it's time we start to discuss these possible consequences in the Bitcoin community, because they are not trivial, and I don't see a way out of them. And I would really like some feedback on this and start the discussion on how we're going to deal with these things.
So what's the first consequence that is kind of raveling in your mind with regards to progression of Bitcoin?
Let's take it from the not so harmful ones to the more harmful ones.
Okay.
So first we can imagine who are the people who have the most Bitcoin. It is a concerning number of scammers, shitcoiners, and bad actors. They are the people who have the most Bitcoin. Money amplifies power. And so a Bitcoinization of the economy, a Bitcoinization of the world could amplify some of the worst people. So we will essentially have scammers at the top. That's one consequence. I think we're going to survive that, but it's not a pleasant thing.
True.
What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, Bitcoin or no Bitcoin, the scammers have always roamed our earth, and they always will. Unfortunately, as you said, them being in a position where they hoard a lot of Bitcoin is not a good one, because my kind of hope for the future is that, people with a lot of Bitcoin can deploy that money into making this world a better place, not to be scamming more people. So how do we circumvent that from happening? I have no answer for that. But I guess with Bitcoin being so transparent, it's harder to scam like people are being scammed in the fiat system, if you know what I mean. So I don't know. And I'm hopeful that people through the Bitcoin journey do start to question their own morals and their own truths. Now, that doesn't apply to everyone. I went into this briefly with Grant Cardone a few months ago, and he kind of said, he doesn't believe that Bitcoin changes you. He goes, like, people that have a shit soul, they're going to have a shit soul no matter how much Bitcoin they have. And to a certain extent, that is true. But how do we circumvent that? I don't know. I'm just hopeful that more people that have a good heart accumulate more Bitcoin, that they can deploy it into better things.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, and as you said now, just holding Bitcoin or just taking psychedelics or whatever it is you do, it's not going to change you per se. It's going to provide you with the plasticity to change, but you actually have to make the decisions to change. So for sure, a Bitcoin could soften some of these people and make them better, more moral. But other than that, this is one of the things that is just gonna resolve itself with time. So I'm not too worried with this long term. Then let's take the second one. In the transition to a Bitcoinized economy, and even during a Bitcoin standard, a lot of people will lose access to their savings. Bitcoin makes you self-sovereign, and that's not without trade-offs. If you send your UTXOs to the wrong address, they're lost. Lose your keys, lose your money. And until the ecosystem improves and becomes a lot easier, the risks are very high, even for people like you and me. Imagine all the people who are less technical than us who have been in this space for a long time. A lot of people will be severely burned moving to a Bitcoin standard unless the ecosystem evolves in a way that helps onboard people and relieves them of some of the responsibility of being a Bitcoin holder. I think that a lot of people who are hodling now could be locked out of their savings without them even knowing it. So a lot of lost funds is undoubtedly going to be a consequence for a lot of people. Thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that are, as harsh as my answer will sound, I think people should take more responsibility more serious. I think as a human race, we've been too softened to give in our responsibilities and everything to the banks, to the government institutions, to just relying on someone to help us out if shit hits the fan. But with Bitcoin, as you said, like if you send your UTXO to the wrong address, or you lost your cold storage and you don't have your seed phrase, you have no idea what it is, it's gone forever. And as bad as that is, I guess people need to get burned to learn their lesson, and hopefully they don't have to get burned. They can learn the lessons early on. But there's no way around it. Like, I think that's another beauty about Bitcoin, the scarcity aspect and the fact that you take full responsibility. And at the end of the day, storing 12 or 24 words is not that hard. It takes some responsibility, and you need to be smart about it, how you do it and distribute it in the right places. But I mean, it's just part of, I guess, of turning into the fourth revolution. It's kind of something you need to adapt to, or you don't survive. So I think, it's part of the journey, as harsh as my sound. But I'm also hopeful on how it's easier, for people to get into Bitcoin, store their Bitcoin. We're only 16 years in since the protocol came to be, right? Like when you zoom out and look at the 4.5 billion years timeline of humanity, it's not even a drop in the ocean. It's like, it's relevant in the grand timescale of humanity. So I think for where we are, how far we've already come, is already incredible. Another anecdote, I had Parker Webworthy, the BTC Pay core contributor on, and he was sharing his story in 2010 when he was buying his Bitcoins in New York, where there was no seed phrases. He was storing them on like CDs, like every CD had an individual Bitcoin on them. And he was like, thinking back now, he was like, that was just ridiculous, like what I was doing. But that was kind of just the norm back then, and then, the seed phrases came in, BEP, BIP, don't quote me, I don't know which BEP it was. It was one of the BEPs. So I think as we evolve and more great minds, join the network and put their development skills and their thoughts into it, I think it's going to be easier and easier to safeguard Bitcoin for less technical people. So I think as we progress in the next decade, 2 decades, it's going to get much easier. And and less dangerous for someone to lose their Bitcoin. But most importantly, going to the self-custody aspect, I'm shocked that so many people today are buying these ETFs, are buying all this like paper Bitcoin, where the whole point of Bitcoin is to store your coins. And that goes the same with MicroStrategy, with BlackRock. Currently this week, we see this whole shenanigans and this whole Coinbase debacle. And I don't care about Coinbase. That's a totally different topic. But just like, how do these institutions have hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin and they don't self-custody it? Is a big question to me. They pretend they know what's happening, but they really don't understand it, because if they would, why the hell would you give all that wealth to someone else, to a third party, which the whole point of Bitcoin, if you read the white paper there, it's peer-to-peer electronic digital cash. You store it yourself. You don't need a third party holding your custody. But then, could be regulatory terms or whatever it is. But now we even see in the US that banks can self-custody their own Bitcoin. You don't need kind of the regulatory terms are easing out. So maybe that was a long answer to your question, but I guess it's take self-responsibility and store your seeds in the right manner.
100%. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I ultimately think that self-custody and that the way that Bitcoin works is a feature, not a bug. I'm just looking at the dark side of it, imagining how this is going to play out. And I think that as long as it requires the level of responsibility that it does today, that is locking out a lot of people. Locking a lot of people out of this new system.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
Because I want to ask you a question, but how much is the fiat regulatory environment locking out people from being banked today? Do you think the current Bitcoin system is locking out more people than the actual fiat banking system is locking out people?
100% no. Of course, the fiat system is locking out more people. Bitcoin is inviting all of the unbanked. Of course, there's net benefits. I'm not trying to argue anything else.
No, of course. It was just something that came to my mind because
and it's a good point. It's a very good point. Bitcoin is for anyone and everyone, as long as you are able to take the responsibility that you need to in order to hodl Bitcoin. And I think that the ecosystem is going to evolve in a way that is going to make self-custody a lot easier. Just looking at the evolution of how it's played out until now, of course we're going to engineer better and safer ways of storing our UTXOs. So should we move on to the next one?
Yes, please.
This is
now you're going to take us to the deep end of the pool.
Yes. I have 3 more points, and these are the ones that are slightly more controversial, maybe. And in a Bitcoinized economy, without inflation-funded government spending, some nations may struggle to defend themselves against wars, natural disasters, and pandemics. We would essentially possibly see a weakened national defense. Say if a country, let's say a country like Finland, adopts a Bitcoin standard today, and the government couldn't steal from the citizenry anymore, would they be able to produce a military and maintain a military defense against, say, a Russian invasion? If the government can't steal your money, a nation might not be able to defend itself very well. Ultimately, it's a good thing that nation states won't be able to wage war at the scale of World War I and II. But it's pretty awful for those who won't be able to defend themselves because they're moved to a Bitcoin standard, if that makes sense. Thoughts on
It
that?
does. It does. Well, my thoughts are, if we take example that we are on a Bitcoin standard and most of the world has adopted the Bitcoin standard, I think the amount of wars that we will see globally is going to plummet because they're just going to be
Oh yes,
so expensive
that's
to do,
exactly,
right?
and that's this situation where the whole world has adopted a Bitcoin standard, but say that there are a
Hmm.
few ones that are still
In the
living with a
transition period, you mean?
in the transition period, or let's say that some nations just stay on a fiat standard and they are able to steal money from the future,
Hmm.
and you as a Bitcoin nation, you cannot.
You bring up a very strong question there, Ioni. Whew. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't have the answer to this,
I don't have
and
the answer, but like I'll bring up another point if I may, like on with regards to wars. I think the reason we have so many wars in the last 100 years, it's all down to the military, industrial complex. It's all about making
it's
more
about
of that
defending this
fiat
fiat
money,
system.
right? Like it's so if we kind of step away from it, then really waging a war, it's not more about money, but there needs to be a higher, like, I don't know what the reason would be to waging a war, because these
Mhm.
wars are not chosen by the citizens of these countries,
Yep.
like what we're seeing in Russia and Ukraine. Like the average person didn't choose to do that. It's the people that are supplying the guns. They're making billions, if not trillions of dollars of all these donations that the government is paying to these private entities that are sending off these guns and killing off innocent people that have never had a vote, yes or no, do you want to participate in it? So
Mhm.
I'm just hopeful, I'll say that the fiat dies like
Yeah,
super soon, so we eradicate that.
a big benefit of the digitization of society is that we're moving the value of physical resources and land into cyberspace. It makes much less uh, economical and tactical sense to wage hot war
Hmm.
against a nation like the US, where most of the value in that nation is in cyberspace, in FANG stocks, things like that.
Yeah.
A hot war is not going to give you the value stored in cyberspace. So we are effectively moving the front line of all wars into cyberspace. Cyberspace is now the new front um, in every war. That is where the war begins, and it's where it's fought. Physical wars make much less sense today than they did 50 to 100 years ago.
100%. It's like having a horse today waging with a sword. You're not going to get very far. Even like in the context pre-cyber wars with
Yeah,
with
it's
tanks, right?
very costly to it's incredibly costly to wage physical war, hot wars, and especially now, not only because it just intrinsically is incredibly expensive, the reward is so small now because all of the value is in cyberspace.
Hmm.
So I mean, I think that wars don't even have to be very destructive. A war can be productive. We have seen examples of that in history with the last Cold War, where where we saw an arms race between the States and Russia for space, and an arms race in space technology was incredibly beneficial for all of humanity. And now that we are Bitcoinizing the economy, I foresee that another Cold War could be an arms race in energy technologies, where we fight over digital resources like Bitcoin. And that could lead to things like fusion power.
Hmm.
So ultimately, I think that, I mean, the Bitcoinization of the world is going to lead to fewer hot wars. We're gonna take the human out of the loop in future wars, and we're gonna replace rubble and blood with electricity and
silicon
mining
chips.
facilities. Yeah, exactly. And that's a positive development that I look forward to. In the transition, if some nations stay on the fiat standard, it could be fairly detrimental to some of the Bitcoinized economies, perhaps.
Not unless Samsung theory of Omega candles kicks in, and the Bitcoin standard countries actually have a pretty good cushion to allocate if they need to for a defense budget, perhaps.
Yeah, it would be based on voluntarism. You would have to volunteer as a citizen to put up defense.
True.
And fight within your nation's borders. But I mean, as a Bitcoiner, we're sort of separating ourselves from our nations.
From the nation. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Well, because we are, citizens of the earth. Like,
Yes.
you know very well. I told you pre-recording kind of my roots and kind of where I grew up. Like, and always when I traveled the world since a young age, people would ask me, "Where are you from?" And I would always jokingly say, "From planet Earth." And they would be like, "What do you mean from planet Earth?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm from here. Like, I'm from so many different aspects that I can't pinpoint this is my real home. Like, this planet is my home." So it was like even Bitcoin. I felt like I was just part of this little globe that's like flying through the universe. And I think you're right that Bitcoin does kind of evaporate those border nation, state religious lines, pure patriotism. I'm going to die on this hill for this flag, where that nation in most cases is not even helping you. It's restraining you from your full potential. So until people realize that, you're kind of this hamster in a wheel just running, thinking you're doing the right thing, but you need to get the fuck off the wheel and go your own way.
Any nation and any empire that is under threat is going to try to assert itself. So I think that we're going to see nations clamp down on Bitcoin quite hard for that reason, because it is a real threat to borders, to governments, to the existing power structures that we have today.
But haven't we gone through that fight in the last decade, like with China trying to ban it and then Russia trying to ban it, and the list goes on, how many countries tried to ban it, but you can't really ban Bitcoin. Or like today we're living through the tariff war, and that famous words like Bitcoin can be tariffed, right? Like it's a digital asset in cyberspace that kind of lives its own life. And if you live on a Bitcoin standard, like I did last year, I got sick of the EU bureaucrats. I packed up my stuff, boarded the plane, and nobody asked me, "Oh, like, sir, did you declare your Bitcoin?" Like, nobody knew. Like, so I think it's still, at the moment, you can flee wherever you are with the Bitcoin. Unless you're tweeting it out and publicly saying that you're full on Bitcoiner and you own X amount of Bitcoin, which is totally the worst thing you can do. And every time I see someone on X post, I finally reached my goal of X amount of sats, I'm like, I just replied, just remove that post. Like, you don't want to be doing this to yourself, because the surveillance state is just like copying all that on the records, and you never know when they're going to come back and, question you or interrogate you.
So this, I've two points left, but this is a great segue to the last one. So let's do the last one first.
Let's do it.
Bitcoin could become an Orwellian surveillance system with the chainalysis and a permanent record of every transaction. It's like Bitcoin is designed to be a dystopian financial surveillance tool. It could become everything it was designed to prevent. And while no one can prevent Bitcoin, the state can absolutely clamp down on privacy technologies like Samurai wallets, Wasabi wallets, ZK Snacks, and so on. So if the ecosystem, that is what is built on top of Bitcoin, is broken and hijacked, we can only hope that Bitcoin responds with more sophisticated privacy tools. But so far, it hasn't. I'm not worried about Bitcoin, the discovery of absolute mathematical scarcity implemented in a network, upheld through social consensus in a sufficiently distributed network. That discovery remains, and it's always going to remain, like the number 0. But the ecosystem built on top of Bitcoin could be hijacked, turning Bitcoin into a dystopian Orwellian surveillance system. That could happen.
I guess this is the part where Gigi gives his 2 cents, right?
Yes, please.
I totally agree. There is nothing stopping the surveillance state, the big brother, just like hijacking the Bitcoin ledger and trying to connect every UTXO that's broadcasted on the time chain. But at the same time, that swings their way too, right? Like, I believe the nation states do a lot more damage and a lot more murkier stuff than the average or the worst scammers that we know in the space. So it's the pendulum swings both ways. So as much as they can snoop on us, we can also snoop on them. Now, I'm not saying you and me, Ioani, but like people that really kind of like the white hat chain analysis, like the people that track what happens on chain. I don't want to say I have nothing to hide, so I don't care who sees it. That was kind of my take in the beginning of my Bitcoin journey, some 8 years ago. Now I value my privacy much more. And I just hope if we do start trending that way, that people just start falling back on the peer-to-peer exchanges, right? Like as in the white paper, as it said, peer-to-peer electronic cash. Majority of Bitcoin that's been bought in the last decade or so was through SEXs, right? Through centralized exchanges, may that be Binance, FTX, MTGOX, whatever it was, where people went on, did their KYC, verified everything, and those exchanges could collaborate, or vice versa. The government asked the exchanges to give all the records, to see all the transactions that all their clients did. But today we have so many options. May that be HODL, may that be Peach Bitcoin, may that be RoboSats, which I personally use, which works on the Lightning Network. So you're kind of furthering yourself away from on-chain fingerprints. Or just like what Vexel is doing. I recently had Grafton from Vexel, which I love what they're doing. And I hope, that project, shout out to Vexel. Everybody that's listening to this, go out, download Vexel, because that's actually the best way, because you go and meet people in person and actually exchange the Bitcoin. You don't have to rely on someone like on RoboSats. We discussed this on that episode. Like, he asked me, when you do an exchange with someone, like, how can you trust that person? And I didn't have an answer for that. I said, I can. Like, I'm relying on the trust that he's going to do the deed. And if it doesn't, I can do a dispute. And he goes, a dispute. So there is a third party that could interact and interfere in your exchange. But with Vexel, what they're doing with the actual physical peer-to-peer changing, I think that is the way to circumvent it. Now, if you're a corporation, you're not going to go to your local Starbucks to do a deal for 10 million euros peer-to-peer. So there's different calibers on that. But personally, I don't really care about the corporations that want to do a 10 million euro deal. That's their own problem, and they've got other things to worry about more than that Bitcoin transaction. To me, it's all about making people self-sovereign, just like myself, trying to live the life that they want to do and keep it as private as possible and walk their own path, don't shout out and scream and everything and bring too much attention, because at the end of the day, life is short, and I would rather enjoy my time that I have here than trying to be bypassing and really kind of dodging everything that comes my way. So that would be my take on it. Like, I love the fact that Bitcoin's an open ledger that anybody can verify. Even if you're not running a node, you can go to mempool.space, you can put in any hash or any wallet, and you can see it for yourself. You don't need to pay nobody. It's all open source, which to me is the most powerful thing. And I think scammers, going back to one of the previous points that we talked about, those guys, if anything, would be more inclined for like Monero, things that are really anonymous and can't be tracked. To them, like if you're a scammer and you're using Bitcoin to scam people, you're a pretty shitty scammer because everything is tracked. Like at the end of the day, sooner or later, you will be exposed. So
Yep.
It's a thing that goes both ways. And
Yep.
I would say it's more positive than negative, even if we get hijacked. Hopefully we don't.
I agree with everything that you were saying. And I think that the evolutionary pressure on developing proper privacy tools is going to be so great that we are going to see that Bitcoin is truly anti-fragile. But we can't just sit back and relax here.
100%.
For whatever role you serve in this revolution, we are all soldiers fighting a very important war. And shout out to all the developers and people who will develop privacy tools and ensure that Bitcoin isn't hijacked to become an Orwellian surveillance system. I think that is one of the most important known unknowns that we have to deal with going forward. And then I have just one last point of this yin and yang story of Bitcoin on the dystopian road to before we reach utopia. And it's the funding of large-scale projects. Things like space exploration, particle accelerators, solving fundamental physics, medical research. These things are incredibly expensive. They're incredibly expensive endeavors that advance civilization. And they have historically required organization and funding at the state level. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. In a hyper-Bitcoinized society, we could see that we would possibly pull back on that quite a lot, on these types of global efforts. And I'm hopeful that we'll find alternatives, but I'm just not sure what they would be. Thoughts on that, Gigi?
You know what was running through my mind, Ioni, when you were saying that, like how expensive these endeavors are? They're expensive on this illusion of money, because to be honest, nothing really costs anything in the world, right? Now maybe that's a totally different wild take, but like the gold, like if I want to go get cobalt from Earth, like realistically, who am I paying? I'm paying the mining company. But like it all revolves back to the fiat. Like back in the pre-fiat days, like early monetary days, like things were, or pre-government days, let's call it that way, not pre-fiat days, but pre-government days, like things really, you didn't have to pay anyone anything. It's kind of as we evolved and kind of this greed factor came in, oh, this is mine, I own this land, you need to pay me to go dig through it. We started going down this path of needing to pay more and pay more. And as the money printer went on, that's why things today are so expensive to develop. And as you said, huge projects like space exploration, it's just exuberant amount of money. But going back to the core of it, it doesn't really cost anything. Like getting the top scientists in the world to sit in a room, in my ideal world, should be free. And to pursue what they want to do, I don't know how you allocate the actual budget that needs to be done, but like in the current system, you can just go to the printer, print whatever they need for that, and implement it. on a Bitcoin standard, you're right. You can't really go and, to the miners and say, hey guys, I need 100,000 Bitcoin by next Tuesday. I've got this project going on. It's different, but maybe, and I don't know if that's possible or I'm in a total dystopia, like I'm in a parallel universe, but like maybe we could develop these things outside of the traditional monetary means, like develop a new concept. Like Einstein used to say this famous quote, which I love it: you can't fix the problems with the same mind that you created them with. So we live in this pure box that this is how the world runs. We get the funding from the government. This is how it's kind of always been in our lifetime. But maybe there is a better way. And maybe we do discover that better way through a Bitcoin standard.
You're sort of now dancing around the question of what money is, which I love. So we have to understand what money is and what it does for us. Money is this magical technology that lets you convert your time and energy and skill into a token that you can move in time and space. Just magical. And what it does for us is that it lets us coordinate our resources and our workforce. And it helps us collaborate across space, across continents, and generations. So time and space. So it is a fundamental technology to human civilization. It is as fundamental as language. Money is one of the first technologies that we develop as children in prisons. If we colonize a new island where there's never been people before, it is one of the first technologies that always arise. It's one of our earliest technologies. Money is older than written language. So, of course, if we ever evolve to a place where we don't need money by that definition, I don't know what that would be, but it's a cool sci-fi concept. I'm sure it's been explored.
Have you seen Zeitgeist? And
the old,
what's his name? Franco. Oh my god, I'm butchering his name, but you know who I'm talking about. Where he developed, like he dedicates 70 years of his life to developing this like society which doesn't have money in it.
Right.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Zeitgeist is like there's like 4 parts to it.
Yeah,
and I think the last one is about money. Yeah, cool documentary. So yeah, I mean,
but we're talking about the what is money. I guess maybe we could also ask Robert. Like Robert Breedlove's done like 550 plus episodes trying to figure out what money is, and he's still seeking the real question of what is money, which is phenomenal. That most people, if you go out on the street and you ask someone what is money, nobody's gonna give you an actual answer. Like it's what dictates everybody's life, yet nobody knows what it really is.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Crazy.
It really is. It is a fascinating question. And like he says, one of the defining questions of our time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, we're going to have to... I mean, I think that Bitcoin is the best money the world has ever seen. It is a once-in-a-species discovery and invention. And I think it's... and I mean, we have the responsibility now to not mess this up because we could.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm exploring these darker paths in the Bitcoin rabbit hole, just for the love of Bitcoin. And there might be trade-offs in this revolution, and we're gonna have to ride them out and learn to live with them as we have learned to live with the trade-offs or consequences of industrialization. It took us hundreds of years to master industrialization, and we're just now experiencing the greater downsides of digitization. But now we're pretty awesome at being industrialized. We understand that we don't have to colonize other countries or wage war to be industrialized. But these things take time. And I think it's the same with Bitcoin. It's going to take time to master this new technology before we understand what it is. And ultimately, my position is that fiat is, of course, worse. The money printer, the money printer, GG, the money printer is a dystopian sci-fi weapon. It is one of the most powerful weapons ever conceived. I mean, even the most brilliant sci-fi authors couldn't conceive of it if it didn't exist. Because what the money printer is, it is a weapon that is used to wage economic warfare against unborn generations.
Stealing from the future generations.
Yes, it's an economic warfare weapon against unborn generations. And Satoshi is the ambassador for the unborn for that reason. And fiat is also a much worse, it's a better surveillance tool than Bitcoin at this point in time. Because with Bitcoin, we can avoid surveillance. We can't.
And direct identification fingerprints, like through our bank account or whatnot.
Yes. Exactly. It's just that with Bitcoin, privacy and is just not guaranteed. With fiat, surveillance is guaranteed.
That is true. You know what's funny, Ioni, timing wise? So like, I truly believe like there is no coincidences and everything does happen for a reason. And you probably saw an X a few weeks ago when you had the banking issues, when your bank didn't allow you to transfer money to Kraken.
Yeah.
And I was giving you a shout out to the guys at Bull Bitcoin, which have recently entered the European market, which I'm a big fan of. And I'm one of their missionaries. They have around 200 people globally that are helping spread. They're a self-custody exchange. So when you buy Bitcoin through them or sell it, you never send it to them. You wire money to their account, and before you buy it, you put in your own address. And once you buy, the money goes straight into your cold storage or your own hot wallet or whatever. They never hold your custody. And I love what they're doing. And I ordered their merch, and actually their t-shirts, 2 of the t-shirts that I ordered came yesterday in the morning, and today I'm rocking it the first day, and you're going to love what it says on my back. And I think it goes inclined with what you were just saying, because what does it say on the back? What's the mission of Bitcoin?
Destroy fiat.
There we go. That's the mission that we're driving to, right? Like,
yes.
How we get to where we want to be is by destroying fiat. So
very nice.
I fully agree with you. You know, like, fiat is what makes our life miserable. And maybe we don't have slavery in the physical realm where we're out in the fields plowing them, but we are enslaved.
I laid it out in
mentally.
We are modern day slaves.
Without knowing it, in invisible cages. That's the crazy part, that nobody realizes. Like, the average person, forget the money question. That's like the easy one, but they have no idea that they live in an invisible cage where they're slaves to the system that's stealing from them every single day.
Yeah, exactly. The fiat system it's the worst. It's not just the money printer, it's not just a surveillance tool, it's also the erosion of money as our most fundamental technology. And that leads to erosion of culture, erosion of mental health, erosion of time preference. We came out of the Industrial Revolution with a C-, and we're not doing much better with the digitization era. But
we're even lower, no? Would you say?
Well, we're not through it yet, so we'll have to see.
Sure. The final exam is still pending. We're still in the study phase, preparation. Okay, I like it.
Bitcoin will fix the money, and ultimately fix the world, but
it'll take time.
Yes, it will take time, and most revolutionary technologies tend to show the worst sides before we come out on the other side and enjoy the benefits without so much of the trade-offs. And I don't think we've seen the dark side of Bitcoin just yet, but I think it's time we start talking about them. because it will come with unintended consequences that none of us can predict. And my silly little list are just some of the things I think that we're likely to face. But I mean, it is the best money in the world. It is the best money the world has ever seen. And I think that hyper-Bitcoinization is inevitable, depending on the definition, of course. But as I define hyper-Bitcoinization, I think it really is inevitable. And I believe that changing the economic operating system of the world from the fiat system to a Bitcoin protocol will lead to unprecedented abundance, and it will be an upgrade to our mental, physical, social, financial, and spiritual health, our culture, our food, our relationships, our architecture. I think Bitcoin will bring back vibe to society. It will bring back vibe to a dying society. And the question is just, are we ready for the cost? And I think we are.
I love it. I definitely wouldn't say you're a party pooper with those questions. I think you are bringing up very valid questions that we should be discussing more in the space, instead of just asking when are we hitting the next milestone. 500k, 1 billion, like, price is as important as it is. We should be more prepared for what if things go, like, if the lights switch off and it gets really dark. I love the saying, you better walk out with the umbrella than be outside and it starts raining and you start looking for the umbrella. Because once things happen and you're unprepared, that's when the worst outcomes come out of it. So I think some people also are they already think we've fully won. We discussed this just recently, last week or the week before, with Bob Burnett regarding mining. How mining can be, which is the heart and soul of the Bitcoin protocol. Like if mining gets taken over, it's over. And a lot of people think we already won, but mining is in a very critical point, and yet it's getting better with decentralized and the bid axes and Ocean pool, what they're doing. But still, we have a long way to go, and things can get really ugly really fast, because there's three pools, the three largest pools, that hold 70% of all templates that get broadcasted, which is crazy. They dictate what gets through, and everybody's kind of cheering, yay, we're 100k, let's do a 100k party. It's not about the 100k party. It's about, are the blocks going to keep on ticking, and are they going to be censored or not? And that goes to the same with everything, with how we progress into this hyper Bitcoinized world, which I agree with you as well, Ioni. To a certain extent, if you want to live in a Bitcoin hyper Bitcoinized world and on a Bitcoin standard, you can do that already today. You don't have to wait for some certain date. It's much harder, and it's not as easy, but it's still doable. And it's fascinating that it can be done in less than 2 decades of this revolutionary new technology coming out, and you can already do it today. And it's only going to get easier as we go forward. But the easiness doesn't come with being relaxed, but actually trying to figure out how to improve it, how to safeguard it. And yeah, as you said, the developers, they are the modern day samurais with their swords in cyberspace that are really fighting this evil kraken that's putting its tentacles around the freedom tools that are out there, and they're trying to take full control. But it's a battle that is ongoing. It's going to be going on for a long time. Who knows, Ioni? This battle might even surpass our lifetimes. If Bitcoin's the money to be here for the next 1,000 years, what is 60 years? It's nothing. It's like infancy stage.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin can be regarded as a network state and possibly an empire of its own, and we could see many battles ahead. And I would not trivialize the role of anybody partaking in this revolution. Everybody serves a very special role. Like the job that you are doing is incredibly important as a person who informs the public, a person who educates the public, a person who keeps the flame burning, keeping making people feel that this is still relevant, because we cannot afford complacency.
Mm.
This is a technology in a stage where we have to be very actionable. We are losing the battle on the privacy side. But I believe in the Bitcoin community to rise to the occasion and solve these issues. I am by nature an optimist in the sense that I look forward to the future and believe that good things will come.
Me too.
So even if there are dark sides to this revolution, I think that we are eventually going to come out in a place where all the trade-offs are gonna be negligible. We're gonna forget about all of these battles, like we have forgotten about the consequences of the first and second and third industrial revolutions.
I couldn't agree more. I think, going back to, I really believe at the moment it's the greatest time to be alive, as much as people may think like things are bad. And as we said, there's many issues through mental state and the fiat system basically skinning us every day. But like there is so much potential for us as human beings today to make the change, to make the world the best we have ever had, that this is not the time to sit down in the corner and cry, but as you said, take the action. And I think taking actions and having the courage to take the action is something super important that should be amplified in the space instead of just sitting on the sidelines. May that be voting, may that be going out and contributing code, may that be going out and educating people, may that be going out and spreading the message through art, whatever means you see right. You should take the action, because if you don't, it's going to be too late.
I've been thinking about this. Like, are we living in the best time? And maybe, like, in a sense, we are. But I've been questioning like the whole narrative about like abundance, for example. Is that necessarily a good thing? I mean, there are a lot of good things about abundance, but I'm not necessarily sure about it anymore. Like, for example, the abundance of food has prevented starvation, but it has also led to obesity. The number one malnutrition disease in the world today is obesity, not lack of iodine causing thyroid issues, not cachexia, not starvation, obesity. And I'm not sure that the abundance of modern technologies is a good thing either. Like, there's this book, what it's called, I'm blanking on the title, but it follows a hunter-gatherer tribe, and it looks at how happy they are compared to us, judging by how many times a day they're smiling and laughing, how well they're connecting with each other and nature, their general level of happiness. And what they find is that these people are much more happier than we are. So okay, for sure, they don't have access to the same palatable foods that we have. They don't have access to screens or medicine. But do they really need it? Is the question. They have a completely different relationship with life and nature and the cosmos than we do. We fear death in a way that they don't. We have diseases that they don't have. All because we live in this artificial society. And so it begs the question, what is the point of all of this? What is the point of all technology? What is the point of the type of civilization we're building? I'm not against it. I'm for it. but I'm not sure that we live in a time where we have it better than when we were hunter-gatherers. I think that the worst time in human history was probably during the agricultural revolution. The industrial revolution wasn't much better, and I'm not sure that this is the greatest time to be alive. But we are in a transitional phase. During this adolescence of technology, we are experiencing some growth pains. And I think this whole chapter of humanity, of the human story, is worth it because of what might come in the next chapter when we mature as a technological civilization. But if we were to assume that life were to continue sort of like this, with the technology that we have and just a little bit cooler, a little bit faster, a little bit more sophisticated, then no,
It doesn't get better.
Let's go back to solar punk. Let's go back to connecting with nature, with each other, with God, with cosmos, and divorce this project of technology altogether. But I think that we can come out the other end into a solar punk society where we have incredible technology, but we're also deeply connected with nature and the cosmos and each other and ourselves. But before we get there, there's some growth pain, and I'm not sure that this is the best time to be alive.
I want to intervene.
Go ahead.
This goes to what I was talking about, responsibility, but the other aspect that goes hand in hand with responsibility is discipline and self, maybe self-respect is not the right thing, but what I'm trying to get at is, if you really want to live the life that you want to live today, you can do so. For example, I truly believe going out, building a cabin in the woods and living in the nature far away from urban cities is a much healthier, much more peaceful, much more happier life.
Yes.
And today it can be done much, much easier than 100 years ago. And you could essentially, with technology, make it very self-sustainable through solar energy, through water purification, through growing your own crops, which are highly automated. Maybe even soon, if you want to live out in the woods in Asia, you can even have robots plucking out your carrots. Like, things can be super optimized if you wish to do so. But that also depends on action, which we just said a second ago, right? Like, people sometimes they just sit on the couch and they're like, well, like, life is hard, I don't want to do it. It's just easier to pick up the remote, press that Netflix button, and just watch a movie. But like, if you want to, and that, I think the majority of people go for that Netflix route, like, I'll just take it easy. As I mentioned, we as humanity have been really softened down. That responsibility's been given away. Everything's kind of just done for us. May that be streaming, may that be money, may that be food deliveries through Uber. We just pull out the supercomputer out of our pocket. We go choose Chinese burgers, whatever we want. Pap, pap, 2 taps. Apple Pay, pay, done. This courier comes, delivers it to you 15 minutes later. Like, life is so easy that it's easy to get complacent. So, as much as I said it's the best time to be alive, I want to recalibrate that. It's the best time to be alive if you really want to live the life that you want to. It's the easiest way to actually get the means of it, and probably the cheapest, even though we're going through inflation and everything. But especially on a Bitcoin standard, if you're saving in Bitcoin, at least for 1 cycle, but 2 cycles down, you can pretty much really live the life that you want. You're not going to have a yacht, but a yacht's probably not going to give you the happiest times either, because there's a lot of responsibilities with having a yacht, having a massive mansion. The people think that's going to make you happy. The cabin in the woods is going to make you the happiest. And that's my personal plan in the future, is to build like my own family house out in the woods. I grow my own crops. We do our own thing. And I will be the happiest then. I don't need to have a Lambo in the driveway to be the happiest. I don't care about the Lambo. A Lambo is a beautiful car, and I might rent it for a weekend, but I'm not going to put all that resources into something that's just monetarily propped up by the fiat mindset of he's got a Lambo, he's the cool guy. I don't care what people think from the outside. I care what about I feel inside. So that's kind of, I wanted to reflect about my saying of it's the best time to be alive. Because if you really want to pursue the life you want, and maybe not everyone wants this life that I'm sharing, that I want to have, this cabin in the woods. If you want to live in a penthouse in a skyscraper, maybe that's your ideal thing. And that could also be achieved today, where 100 years ago, that would be impossible to be achieved in. So two sides to every coin, like with everything, right? Like,
Yeah, a few thoughts on this.
no.
You raised a few interesting points here. One, I want to sort of push back a little bit on is the idea that it's easier today to go out into the woods and build a cabin. It absolutely is. You're correct. However, human action is determined by the opportunities that are presented to us. And 100 years ago, we didn't have that many of the opportunities that we have today. And those other opportunities that we have today, like Netflix, is going to be pulling on us. So, I mean,
100%.
of course, we should, of course, that type of behavior shouldn't be excused. But we also, I think, shouldn't blame people for living in an artificial situation that is compromising their best versions of themselves. It's kind of like saying that exercise and health is a choice, which it is. But if you are a 45-year-old woman working 3 jobs, single mom, 3 kids, financial strain, possibly depression and some other physical illness, 2-hour driveway to the closest gym, comparing that person to a person like you and I, and saying that exercise is a choice, I mean,
It's not fair.
It's not fair.
That's true. Yeah,
It's not fair. It is a choice. It is a responsibility. Yeah. So that's one of the excellent points you raised that I just wanted to
clarify.
To clarify.
And I think just to add, I mean, I was more focusing on the Gen Zs and kind of the earlier generations, right? The guys that are only starting their lives, which are kind of throwing away, if I could say, a lot of potential out the window, flicking on social media instead of actually putting in their creative work and finding something that they love and put their passion into it. As opposed to, as you said, the example, a 45-year-old single mom that's got like so many things, like definitely
Gen
not the
Z
same.
and Gen Alpha, they have a very special experience growing up. Because you and I, we belong to pretty much the last generation that is
that had feet in both worlds.
Yes, exactly. And our minds had the were growing up and being formed in a time where our minds weren't hijacked by modern algorithms. The younger minds, the reason why they have shorter attention spans is because we have now, there's this new type of attention, a new type of memory being created that we've never seen in our species before.
It's like DNA programming from the youngest age.
Yes, and what they have is a fragmented memory, a fragmented attention span, where they are essentially doing nothing but multitasking all the time, switching between posts and tasks, and pretty much are eroding their ability to stay with a task for any longer periods of time. And this is being done to them during their transformative years, when they don't have a fully formed prefrontal cortex. They don't have the ability to judge the potential impairment that these algorithms are causing them. They don't have the judgment to see the consequences, nor take the responsibility, nor govern their own impulses in the same way that somebody who is past the age of 25, when your brain is fully formed. I mean, this is also a case of where it's not really fair to say that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are throwing away potential. This is being done to them. It's through no fault of their own that they are experiencing a different kind of memory than you and I are. Hold on, let me actually check. I can't quite recall what it was called. Let me have a look real quick.
While you looked that up, I was gonna say I fully relate. I have two generation alphas. I'm a father of two generation alphas. Yet they're like pre-social media age, but like a 5 and a 3-year-old, which like the attention span is nowhere. Like they're constantly all over the place, and maybe that's how just kids are at that age. But like, I feel like already now, you know, they take not my phone, but mom's phone, and they go straight into, like, it's so easy to them, not social media, but like they love taking their own videos, creating their own content already at such a young age. That to me is just fascinating. Like, you are so young, and to them it's just second. Like, they're just it's all natural. Like they've leaf bound that. I remember my early days with technology, with the dial-up internet, when I had to like dial up this phone and listen and wait for it, and then download a movie on LimeWire for about 3 days in terrible quality. Like, it was a very different experience to pulling out a supercomputer and going to like all these like crazy apps and like, yeah. And it's a big question, as you said, that we've never had this, we've never witnessed, like, how does that affect them in the long term? And it's a scary feeling, because at the same time, you can also not isolate these generations. Like, before becoming a father, like I always said, like kids will never have a phone until they're like 14, 15 years old. And then they came around, then you realize you can't like isolate them from technology, because then it's going to be very strange for them. They're going to basically become outcasts in society. So you have to juggle this balance where I time it. Like, I'm very like, if you want to do something or like what something, there's like a 30-minute bracket. The 30 minutes are done. Bam, we go into something else. We go drawing. We go for a walk. We like do something in the physical realm. It's not like put on YouTube playlist and like 3 hours they're like zombified, like looking at a screen. So I guess it goes back to balancing acts as a young parent. Is something I'm also learning and juggling and trying to figure out, because it's all, who knows where it leads us. But yeah, back to.
So you have essentially like you have different kinds of mental processings. You have active processing, which like it creates clear memories, it builds neural pathways, and it makes time feel real. This is when you engage with stuff, when you read something, learn something, and explain it again. Then you have passive processing, and that creates more like hazy memories, or no memories, doesn't build lasting pathways, make time feel phantom. This is when you
like the school days, you mean?
yeah, exactly, like a school day, or like when you watch a movie or something and you're not really engaged with it. So these are the two types of processings that you and I grew up with. But then we created all of these
Hyperactive processes.
these algorithms, and now we have a third type of processing, which is called fragmented processing. And this is the default type of mental processing that the younger generation are experiencing. They're not processing the world either actively or passively like you and I are. They are processing it in a fragmented way, where they are essentially doing nothing but multitasking all the time. They are not engaged with things. They essentially have an ADHD mind, and cannot do anything about it. They are through no fault of their own, victims to these algorithms that have shortened their attention span and made them, given them a disadvantage in life that I think we are not fully, that we're not fully seeing and taking into account when we judge the predicament of the younger generations.
It's scary stuff.
Yeah, it
But
is.
at the same time, like, I guess the logical, the moral thing would be to just shut down these massive corporations that do it. And to be honest, you can count them on one hand. It's Meta, it's Alphabet, TikTok, and I don't know, like a handful of, 2-3 more others. And you would like suffocate like 95% of the system that's making our future generations kind of, what would you say, fragmented
Fragmented processing.
fragmented processes.
Yes.
But once again, we can't do that. Why? Because we have this shitty fiat. It's all about making more money.
We have an economy that does not take into account externalities.
Yeah.
A tree is more worth chopped down than standing in the forest. An animal is worth more on a plate than roaming wild in the woods. People are more worth when they are just healthy enough to work, but sick enough to be consumers of
The pharma
medical
industry.
attention and services and pharmaceuticals. And our young generations are worth more with fragmented processing and addiction to algorithms than they are with healthy minds, because we don't take into account externalities, because our current financial system is not able to, and it would require a massive transformation of the protocol of the global economy to take all of those externalities into account. I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm hoping it's Bitcoin, but it would be one of those second or and third order effects of upgrading the global economic operating system that might be an unintended positive consequence of moving over to a Bitcoin standard.
I have another thing that came to my mind in this discussion. Is maybe that the reason the Gen Zs are not that interested about Bitcoin? Because with Bitcoin, you need to put in your proof of work. It's not something you see a TikTok short of 10 seconds and you're like, oh, I fully get it. This is going to make my life so much better. They're just like it's like a old school film, it's like
Yes.
scene.
Yeah, exactly.
And with Bitcoin, you need to sit down and pick up that book and read it a few hours every day consecutively for a few weeks to complete it, and then you go to the next one. And that's a very different process.
One thing. I think this is absolutely contributing to why the younger generations aren't interested. I think that perhaps an even bigger issue is that they have so much stress in their lives from their inability of active processing, inability to connect, inability to engage with things, and that causes isolation. It causes stress, and that deepens the addiction to
scrolling the
algorithms, which gets them a little bit of
dopamine hits
and serotonin. And I mean, we cannot underestimate what dopamine and serotonin does for humans. They are vital to our survival. If we look at, for example, at the opioid addicted brain, it is unable to produce dopamine and serotonin. And these people, they stop taking care of themselves. They stop eating, they stop drinking, they stop procreating, they stop living. And the only way that they can feel somewhat normal is if they go to the opioids. So it really is a very dark spiral. And it's not that different when you're addicted to technology, algorithms. If it hijacks your brain and making your default processing mode fragmented instead of active and passive, that means that you will not be able to engage and connect. And not being able to engage and connect drives isolation, and it drives addiction. The opposite of sobriety, or sorry, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. So when you have a life or a brain where you're unable to connect and engage at a deeper level because your default mode is fragmented processing, that essentially you're dealt a hand where life is just going to be much harder for you. You're going to be prone to addiction, mental health issues, and Bitcoin is not going to be your top priority.
You're right.
I don't know how we solve this. I think that we solve this by taking the responsibility as the older generation to actually Bitcoinize the economy as much as possible, because that is going to realign incentives. It's going to take into account externalities. It's going to lead people down a path of mental and physical health, and it's going to strip the fiat system of a lot of its power over people. And along with that, I think that some of these harmful technologies could also
Be toppled.
be toppled.
Shit, Ioni, I thought I was gonna get a good night's sleep tonight, but I'll be thinking all night that we've got a big battle still to fight, and a lot of final bosses to conquer on our path
Yes, we do.
to an
Yeah,
abundant
how
future.
about this, Gigi? How about we do we compensate for this episode with a more bullish and happy and light one sometime later this year.
I like that. I like that thought. We do a nice little yin and yang spin,
Yes.
and focus on the positives on how Bitcoin's making our lives better. But I really enjoyed everything we discussed in this episode, and I'm looking at the time. I can't believe we're like close to 2 hours into this conversation. It feels like we started like we're 40 minutes in, but like what we discussed, I think is super important, and I hope a lot of people take the time to listen to this, because what we discussed essentially is it's not all roses and daisies, but like times can get really challenging, and there's still a lot of things to conquer and really discuss and consider and build together if we want to build this beautiful orange world that we all see ourselves moving into.
Yeah, this is a call to arms, man. I mean, be a grown up. Take your responsibility as a Bitcoiner. See the value of the work that you're contributing to the most important war in human history. This is you are fighting the good fight, and don't forget that you are an incredibly important person, whatever it is you are doing within the Bitcoin ecosystem. If you go to a conference, if you talk to people, if you just hodl, doesn't matter what you do. If you are part of this revolution, you are incredibly important, more important than you realize. And when we look back at this time in 300 years, we are gonna be incredibly grateful for all the hard work that we put in. It's not an easy battle, but it's an important one. I don't think that this is the most comfortable or best time to be alive. I don't. But I wouldn't want to have it any other way, because the people living now, driving the Bitcoin revolution, we are here because we can carry this burden. It is a privilege and an honor to have front row seats to the extinction of the fiat system and rolling out this new Kardashev Type 1 technology, a new protocol for the world that is truly, truly transformative. But it comes with a fight. And all of us here today, we're here because we have this mission, this purpose. And living a life with purpose and meaning is a much greater life than a comfortable one without purpose and meaning.
I think those are some powerful words to bombshell this episode, and it's a fight worth fighting, guys. I mean, I have nothing to add on it. I think there's been a lot of strong points that were discussed in this conversation. I would like to thank you for giving the exclusive, not even waiting for BTC Prague or the Helsinki conference, but you came on here and we actually did a two-way back and forth feedback on it. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure the listeners who are still on listening to this have definitely still enjoyed it. Ioni, thanks so much for taking the time to come back on. Thank you so much for everything you're doing and putting your thoughts and bringing these conversations to the surface, which I think are super important to have, to be done instead of just, posting memes and laughing things off and just saying, oh, like fiat's dead, like we won. We haven't. Like the battle is still on. We are in the sheds, sharpening them tools, them swords, and polishing them boots, because the battle's gonna be a long one, and a potentially digitally bloody one, but it's all gonna be worth it in the end for us, for our future generations, and for the future of humanity. Ioni, where can we send our listeners who want to connect with you and follow more of what you do? I mentioned your YouTube channel in the introduction, but where's the best place for listeners to get in touch and follow the work that you do?
My YouTube channel is Ioni Appelberg, IoniAppelberg. Same on X, just Ioni Appelberg. That's where I'm most active. I haven't been posting a lot on YouTube lately, but I have 3 videos ready to go on Bitcoin as an economic psychedelic. So that whole thing is, I've been putting that off for some time, but now I've finally finalized it and it's ready to go. I just haven't published it yet. So yeah, those 2 places on the interwebs. And then, of course, I have to point you to my book, Abundance Through Scarcity. I'm very proud of that work. It's a good read if you want to understand Bitcoin at a fundamental philosophical level. I can't recommend it highly enough.
And as I said in the beginning, and I wasn't just saying it to because Ioni's sitting in front of me digitally, that it's one of my all-time favorite books, and as an avid Bitcoin literature reader, that must say something as well. But no, honestly, it's incredible, and definitely the physical copy is. I know I was lucky enough to buy the second version at last year's BTC Prague, but like the artwork and like the overall feel, it's pretty special. It's just not another Bitcoin book. It's a special one that every true Bitcoiner should be having a copy of their own on their bookshelf. And I'm talking about the hardcover, not the paperback one, the real deal. But yeah, Ioni, I guess we will be seeing each other in just a couple of months' time in Prague. I'm looking forward to connecting in real life, which is always so much better. And anyone listening, if you still don't have your tickets for BTC Prague, we'll do a quick shill. Use BTC Story for 10% discount to stack some more sats with those 10% discount. But yeah, jokes aside, definitely BTC Prague is a fantastic conference. personally one of my favorites. Come down, you'll get to meet Ioni in person, Gigi, many other Bitcoiners. It's just overall, as Ioni said, no matter what you're doing, even if you just buy the ticket to attend the conference, you are doing something positive and helping the Bitcoin ethos come to realization. So I hope to see you guys in Prague this summer. And Ioni, once again, thank you so much. We will definitely be doing one in the second half of 2025 on the positive side of Bitcoin. Today we covered the yang, the dark side, but we need to do the yin as well with the light side. So we'll definitely do that later in the year, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in a few months' time.